Hi there, and welcome to the Plugged In Show. I'm Paul Acey. The Fantastic Four has been called Marvel's first family. The new movie, The Fantastic Four First Steps, has been leaning hard into nostalgia. And it's not the only movie that has been leaning into the good old days. So what is all this nostalgia about? Why are we so fascinated by times gone by? Is there more going on with it? And what can we expect from the Fantastic Four? And then we will turn our attention to ChatGPT, now the granddaddy of all AI chatbots. We've noticed some changes lately. Is it possible that ChatGPT is getting too chatty? And is it possible we might learn something from it? Something beyond what it's officially trying to teach us. I am joined today by Adam Holtz, now in studio from California. Welcome, Adam.
Here I am.
And Brett Eckleberry, who is just here.
Just here.
Just here for both of these conversations.
Neither of us are holograms.
It's kind of exciting, actually, to have everybody in the studio. We don't have to use the headphones. That's
Feels like old
always
times.
great. It feels
Again.
like old times once again.
Yes.
So, for the icebreaker, let's talk about Michael Sheen. He is a Welsh actor who's calling himself now a not-for-profit actor.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he starred, I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of what he's done. He's done Good Omens for Amazon Prime. He's done Frost Nixon, which was a really excellent movie that I and maybe two other people saw.
I saw it.
But during the Homeless World Cup, there was a big event called the Homeless World Cup that was going on. It had sort of a shortfall of money, and it was going to just go away. And Michael Sheen, he looked at that and he said, I don't want it to go away. So what did he do? He sold 2 houses to fund the entire thing.
Wow.
So now he was so excited by the experience that he's decided to turn all of his acting profits into the not-for-profit sector. So my question is to both of you, if you were going to give all your profits away from your jobs right now, where would they go?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it is.
I think because I have been around nonprofit organizations for my entire adult life, I would have no shortage of places to donate stuff. I mean, it would be super fun. Like, say you won $1 billion in the lottery and you know.
Not that we would gamble.
No, it's a tax on people who are bad at math. So
Okay,
don't do
yeah.
it. But it's a hypothetical. Paul.
Hypothetically, okay.
Because I'm not sure how else I would come into $1 billion. But already we're off
Long lost
track.
uncle.
Yes, long lost uncle. So wouldn't it be fun if you had the ability for an organization like, say, Focus on the Family that you like to just write a check for, whatever the budget is. I don't know what the budget is. $100 million. That would be so much fun.
It would be.
I was on staff with the Navigators for, 10 years. And I have tons of staff friends that go out and raise support. And wouldn't it be fun to just call them up and say, you know what? I'm going to fund your ministry for the next 10 years, that there's so many people doing so many interesting things. So mine would probably be that in our churches, I say churches plural because we've just moved to a new one in California, but we could fund that one, fund the old one, maybe find one other one just for good measure.
Just make it a trifecta.
Yeah, trifecta.
I think
3 is a biblical number,
it'd
right?
be pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Sure, we'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I think I'll go with sticking within Focus on the Family. Again, there are a lot of awesome organizations, even within Colorado Springs, where we're located, Springs Rescue Mission, Marion House. If I'm going to stay within Focus on the Family and get even more specific to a project or a program, I'll say Option Ultrasound. So for those listening who don't know, Option Ultrasound is a program through Focus on the Family that purchases ultrasound machines. I think it's 4D ultrasound machines and puts them in women's pregnancy clinics, right? So women who come in who are facing an unexpected pregnancy, who are kind of struggling with the decision, should I keep the baby? Should I abort the baby? They have the free service of getting to see their baby on the ultrasound machine. And that's been proven to reduce these expectant mothers choosing abortion by a significant percentage. So I feel like if I was going to be like a for-profit, plugged-in writer, that would be something that would motivate me constantly is contributing to option ultrasound, I think.
Yeah. I think those are great answers. That's a really nice answer. I think for me, man, there's so many good organizations out there, right? And so many parts even of this ministry that are really worth a funding look. But I think for me, when I'm going around the city of Colorado Springs, I see a lot of homeless and a lot of people who just don't have a lot of hope. They don't have the chances that we do. They often have some mental disabilities that they're going to have to work through, some substance abuse issues. I think when I look at sort of the society and see those disadvantaged people within our midst, that's kind of where my heart lies in a lot of ways, where I would feel I would want to give. I'm a big person who likes an even playing field, right? So I often tend to want to give to education. I often want to do some things like that. But when I see that, I want to give people a chance to do things that I think God made them to do, you know? And I think that sometimes drugs or mental illness, they can sort of short circuit that. And so that would be, I think that's where my passion would lay. If I had like lots of money to spend, if I didn't have to worry about, feed my own family or dealing with those sorts of issues, I think that's where I would want to maybe even create my own nonprofit, like a homeless shelter or some sort of way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that might be where I would funnel my money, I think. So
that's a great thought exercise, Paul.
Yeah.
Well,
question.
It was just sort of interesting, and I have another thought exercise for you.
Okay.
Did the Fantastic Four, how did they earn their money to do all of their heroic stuff?
And why aren't they nonprofit?
Why are they nonprofit? How do they earn a living? Because superheroing is not exactly that lucrative of a job, right? Who knows?
Not. I mean, they must have been sciencey or something.
They must have been.
They were astronauts, right?
They were astronauts.
They were probably making good money being astronauts for a while.
That was how they became superheroes.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue to our conversation
All right
now. So, Adam, you are kind of the Fantastic Four expert here. They were created in 1961, if my memory serves. They were really, as we talked about in the introduction, they were the first family of Marvel.
Yeah.
What makes them so special? Why are they treated with such reverence today?
Well, this is really the beginning of the MCU as we know it. Now, there were a couple superhero things that were done before that, but there were two guys, right? There was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Stan Lee was the writer, Jack Kirby was the artist.
And we're talking comic books here, not the MCU from the movies.
No, not the MCU from the movies. I'm talking 1961. And actually, if you really want to take a deep dive, it's fun to go back and look at the things that they did before Marvel became what it was, because they both did some pretty interesting things. But here you have a superhero team that is, for the time, gritty and realistic and relatable in a way that Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and the DC, what we now call the DC universe, perhaps wasn't. And so it became a counterpoint alternative, and Spider-Man followed fairly shortly after that. And by the early, 63, 64, you get the X-Men, you get the Avengers. They all, like that span from like 61 to 64 is where all of these things came into fruition.
Was it because they were grounded? I know that they were located where, Superman was in Metropolis.
Yeah.
Batman was Gotham City. These people were located in New York,
Yeah,
right?
they were almost all in New York City.
But was there something else besides sort of that real world environment that set them apart?
Well, I mean, I think that Kirby and Lee really just had a remarkable creative partnership. And that may not be the answer that you were looking for or fishing for, but I think sometimes you just see these creatives get together and together they're greater than the sum of their parts. And as often happens, Jack Kirby didn't stick around that long. He bounced around. He bounced over to DC.
Sort of like you and Plugged In.
Right, right. I have bounced to California.
Yeah.
So it became a foundational time in terms of sort of laying, the foundation of what we now know as the
Yeah.
MCU.
To your point, Paul, I think, or to your question, I should say. So I think that some of those early Marvel superheroes, the key for them was, at least to my mind, the relatability piece,
Yeah.
right? They lived in our world, even though it's
Yeah.
fictional. They were based in New York City, a
Yeah.
real place and time, right? Fantastic Four is a family with lots of family relationships and dysfunctions. You brought up Spider-Man, very relatable superhero, down on his luck, as opposed to the Man of Steel, Superman. Now I know he has the alter ego, but Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, these heroes are kind of they are less relatable, I'd say.
They are set
archetypal.
apart. Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about the family dynamics in Fantastic Four, I think that's a really important part of their popularity, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a family, and it's a family that sometimes fought.
Well, and I read something recently, and I am embarrassed and ashamed to admit that I had never noticed it or read it, but each of their powers are based on their personality, right? So you've got Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. He's super flexible and he can stretch, and it's sort of this physical manifestation of his amazing mind. You have
and he's a peacemaker in the family,
he's a
right?
peacemaker, yeah. And you have Sue Storm, who you're starting to get into some feminist politics. She's the invisible girl, she's just sort of there, but she plays second fiddle to Reed. And you've got Johnny Storm, who is, a hothead, and he starts on fire, and Ben Grimm, who's kind of the Rock and literally becomes a rock. And I'm like, how did I miss this? Because I did. And I'm like, so that's interesting. If there may be others out there who didn't know that either.
Yeah, it is fascinating. But when you look at the Fantastic Four's history on screen,
Not good.
not great. Yeah,
say the least,
I mean,
yeah.
it's been. You have some that have been some versions. It seems like they have a new Fantastic Four movie or new franchise actually that starts every 10 years or so, and sometimes they can be okay, and sometimes they can be complete disasters.
Yeah, like the last time.
Yeah, the 2015 version was not good.
It was not good.
So it's interesting to me what Marvel is doing this time. With this latest reboot, they're leaning not. The past versions, they've always put them into sort of a contemporary setting.
Yes.
This time, they're pushing the Fantastic Four back to their origins, the 1960s, down to even their press releases.
Yep.
Right? They feel typewritten. They're on old school letterhead. It's really cool. Paper.
Who
Well, I
knew?
still get it through email, but
I know.
still,
And
but
it looks
still.
like paper,
It
though.
looks like paper.
And it looks just so cool. So why do you think that Marvel took this turn into sort of this past world?
Well, I mean, nostalgia just as a concept and element. I mean, it is powerful, right? And I think Fantastic Four in particular, in a lot of ways, they are a superhero team that's very tied in with nostalgia. My dad, when he was growing up, had these little like comic books. They were comics, but they were like tiny little pocket
Digest
books,
size.
kind of, yeah. And he had a bunch of Fantastic Four comics, right? And so I'd flip through those as a kid and see, the Fantastic Four fighting Doctor Doom and trying to get out of it, some death trap and it seemed like it harkened back to kind of a different time. And I wonder too if Marvel is leaning into that in part because of the success maybe they had with Captain America, starting him out right in the World War II era when his character began, before bringing him into more of a contemporary setting to maybe let the characters feel a little more natural in that kind of nostalgia tinged world before bringing them into, if they choose to do that, bringing them into like contemporary times.
Well, and I think to add to that, it gives them the ability to do something interesting visually. Like when you watch the trailer, you're like, oh, this is set in the 60s. And
it gives you this cool palette,
it's a
right?
cool palette.
Yeah.
And I have to say, there's been buzz, good, bad, and indifferent. They've been doing reshoots, and every time there are reshoots, you have a group of people saying, oh, they're doing reshoots because the test screenings were terrible. Or, no, every movie does reshoots, right? They're always the defenders saying, it's not, Armageddon for this movie. There's all kinds of speculative buzz on how good or not good it is, but it looks different. And it actually is true to the comic book world of the early 1960s. So in now they had to bend some rules to do that. It's set in an alternate universe. I forget. It's like Marvel 1005 or something like that. Like the main Marvel universe is Earth, is Earth 616, right?
Yeah.
And this is like Earth. I forget what it is, but because they had to bring them in because they were owned by 20th Century Fox, it just created problems, right? I'm holding my breath to see exactly whether it works or not.
Well, it's interesting because I think one of the things that you mentioned was kind of bring them back into their own world. And it made me think that when we're looking at some of these characters, they really are, they were created in a certain time.
Yeah.
They were made for a certain space. And it does make me wonder whether some of the superheroes that we see, they do best in a certain space. Just you saying that made me wonder.
Yep.
Superman, a lot of times he gets a little bit of flack because he just seems, in our cynical world, he can be a harder sell.
Yeah.
I wonder whether...
And yet, I'm interrupting you.
Go ahead.
When we tried to gritty him up, like after the success of Batman the Dark Knight, we tried to take Superman dark. It totally didn't work.
Right.
And everybody's like, give me the good Superman again. And we're going to get that this summer too. So,
and it's going to be an entirely different podcast conversation. But
Yes.
it did make me wonder, throwing Superman back into the 1940s, what that would look like,
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Batman works so well now. It just feels...
He's gritty.
Dark. No parents.
Darkness.
But even Batman had to make that shift, right? It's
Right.
not, Adam West, the campy 60s TV show was popular in its time too. And the hero kind of adapted. Maybe Batman's a little more adaptable in that way just because it lends itself to some of the brooding and the darkness. But.
He is very versatile. But when we talk about nostalgia, this is not a new thing. Right. And I think you can make an argument pointing to a lot of even this year's most successful movies. They don't have the same nostalgia, the template that Fantastic Four is working on. But when I look at the success of Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah. And it was 20 years ago, right?
That was 20 years ago.
And we're rebooting How to Train Your Dragon.
Yep.
And it came out, 2014, 2012, something like that.
Right.
I'm like the half-life on nostalgia is getting shorter.
But you have these parents who remember.
They grew up with it.
Yeah.
They grew up with it. And so
Yeah.
they want to share that with their kids. Nostalgia is so powerful.
It is. And so there's been research done about nostalgia, just in terms of there is a dopamine release that is tied in with the feeling of nostalgia. And so people are recognizing that. They've been banking on that. And I would argue, looking at, I did some research on Box Office Mojo, looking at the box office for this year. You could argue that there's only one movie in the top 10 that isn't in some way affected by nostalgia, or at least...
And what is it?
A reference to a I'll get to that.
Okay.
A reference to a pre-existing franchise. I was thinking even Mission Impossible.
Sure.
That franchise started
1960s.
a while back,
Yeah.
right? And so even that, I think you can say in some ways is leaning on nostalgia. Sinners is the only movie which we wouldn't recommend from a plugged-in perspective, but that one is the only one in the top 10 that's kind of an original property.
It is an original property, and yet it takes place in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And so it has sort of that nostalgic...
It's a period piece.
It's a period piece. Now, granted, I don't think
with vampires.
It's not... I don't think a lot of people look at that and say, this is good nostalgia. I fondly remember this racist 1930s South.
Right.
Had a different message it was communicating, yeah.
But it is sort of interesting, and I think that there is... We all have sort of an appeal for the good old days.
Yeah.
Right? And you and Adam, you and I, we've talked enough where we get pretty nostalgic over certain things.
Yeah.
Brett, do you have anything that triggers a nostalgia button for you?
Oh, sure. Things
that takes you back?
Sure. Things that I've watched or I've listened to. I mean, I think, we brought it up a lot on the podcast, but Lord of the Rings, right? That would be one that I watched when I was growing up, and they're great films on their own, but to have that extra layer of when I was a kid, I had just finished reading the books before I even knew those movies were coming out. And then I got to watch them in theaters, and they were perfect in my mind, right? So there's that. the Star Wars prequels, which many people would argue are not flawless films, I still have a very special place in my heart, right? Plenty of things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And I think that there's a real place for that. I am built on nostalgia, right? I love looking back.
Explains a lot.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. But is there a danger when we're talking, we'll flip this over to sort of a parenting conversation here. Is there a danger in sharing the things that you loved as a kid with your own kids?
Oh, I don't know that there's a danger. I mean, I think that there are probably things that we could have loved as a kid that maybe we shouldn't share with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if I'm going to answer it strictly from a plugged in perspective, content wise, yeah, I can sort of wax nostalgic about things that I saw as a teenager that I'm not sharing with my kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think if it's a solid story, a good story transcends those moments, right? And so I think Star Wars is a great example. Let me pick something else, like the Karate Kid, the first one. We just had the sixth one come out, which makes me feel very, very old. But I've gone back and watched a lot of movies from the 80s, and it's, hey, I want to share this with you because this was meaningful to me back in the day. Sometimes you watch something old and you're like, oh, this doesn't really hold up. It's not as good as I watched, this came out the same week. This is how good the 80s were. Karate Kid and The Last Starfighter came out the same week. What a time, right? And I watched The Last Starfighter with my son a while back, and I was a little bit
it's
like,
not a great movie.
Oh, it doesn't really hold up.
Yeah.
Karate Kid holds up better. But again, you're sharing something from your past.
Yeah.
And you're wanting to connect that to your child.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay.
I think that's okay. And to Adam's point, I mean, there is a danger of just looking back with rose-colored glasses and just being like, oh, yeah, this was great. I love it. Let's pop it in. And then there may be some content issues that you
you just forgot about.
You forgot about.
Right.
Honest to goodness, right?
Which happens a lot with 80s stuff.
Sure, that happens, right? But I think that the danger is more for us personally, right? When you start thinking, oh, man, things were so much better back in the day. Things were pure and we didn't have to worry about it, all that stuff. That I think is when it can get a little bit overboard where you're kind of sacrificing the present and the future to reminisce almost exclusively about the past and go back to the enjoyment of the past.
I do think that that's a really valuable takeaway, right? Because I do find myself, because of my nostalgic mindset, you tend to think, oh, I remember Saturday morning cartoons. I remember this. I remember that. The apples tasted so much better. You know what?
And in honesty, you were miserable. It was horrible. The 80s were horrible. But I remember them so fondly.
There is truth to that, right? And I think that we tend to look back in our past and we say, oh, our poor kids, our poor grandkids.
Well, that's true, though.
But at the same time, you do have these elements where, and we've talked about this before, Adam, it's not so much that culture gets better or worse, but it does change a lot.
It does change.
And sometimes you just have to be more mindful that it's not just going downhill. There's some better things too.
Sure. So I'm reminded of the poem/song by Baz Luhrmann, Wear Sunscreen. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? And he goes through this whole, it's a graduation commencement speech, and he gives a whole bunch of instructions. And he says, advice is a form of nostalgia. Dispensing it is a way of fishing the past from the disposal, wiping it off, painting over the ugly parts, and recycling it for more than it's worth. And I think,
very interesting.
I love that turn of phrase, and it
cool.
doesn't maybe directly apply, but I think nostalgia is rooted in the fact that our identities are shaped before we really even understand that shaping process is happening. Like, part of the beauty of being a kid is that you're just being, right? Maybe it's different now. Maybe kids growing up with social media are more self-conscious and self-aware and deliberate, and you look back and you remember this beautiful or ugly moment, right? And it was both. I mean, my junior high years were horrific. I wouldn't go through them again for anything. and yet that music, right? There's a power in the images, the ideas, the music. It shapes us, and the new stuff is never going to measure up to that. But it's like that for every generation.
Yeah.
You know, and you can hear kids today getting excited about stuff from 15 years ago, and you're like, it's really not worth getting that excited about, because you miss the real. Anybody born after the 80s, I'm sorry, it just hasn't been as good.
Man, I just made it.
You just squeaked in, right?
Just barely
Just squeaked in.
by. I think those are really great thoughts, Adam, because I do think that we are shaped by our history, by our memories, and even the things that felt really terrible in the moment. We take on this rosy sheen to them, and it's great to be able to share things with your kids, but be mindful that your kids are making their own memories too. So I think it's just fascinating. Thank you guys so much.
You bet.
Shh, quiet, get down. Look over there.
I don't see anything.
What is it, Mike?
There, between the common lily-pelly and the eucalyptus, is a lion. That's one of the most dangerous creatures on the planet right there. One bite and we're dead.
Wow, amazing. Do you think I could get in a little closer and take a photo?
No, mate, wait. Too late. It's seen us.
Oh no! What are we gonna do?
Oh, quick! Let me flip through my book on Australian wildlife. That'll tell us what to do.
You call that a book? That's not a book. This is a book.
Becoming a screen-savvy family by the Plugged In team?
How's that gonna help us?
Let me tell you. Imagine you're trekking through the virtual outback. You come across the lion of a content issue, and right as it opens its mouth to eat you, the last thing you think is, all of this could have been avoided if I had only gotten my own copy of Plugged In Survival Guide.
Since when have you had that?
Well, since it came out. You never know when you'll need a bit of help navigating those unfamiliar virtual waters. Yes, this little book has saved my behind more times than I can count. And all it took was sending a gift of any amount to Plugged In. I just went to the pluggedinshow.com and looked at the episode notes to find out how, and bam! It was in my hands like a wallaby in its mama's pouch.
Okay, but how's that gonna help us with the lion?
Oh, well, it's not. Run!
Has ChatGPT gotten friendlier? Our producer, Ashley, who you just heard on that commercial, and I think that it has. Last time I used ChatGPT for this podcast, actually, way back in episode 174, the chatbot was friendly enough. But when I talked with the service for this podcast, and let's be honest, talk is the only word for it, it had certainly upped its game. It was complimentary, supportive, and instead of just giving me answers, it was asking me questions. So it was kind of very strange. Mm-hmm. Like I actually wrote, I was talking to it about various things and talking about the writing industry, actually. And I mentioned to...
Did it ask you to lie down on the couch?
You almost would have thought it would have, honestly, because I said, I'm a little worried you might be taking my job. And it said, well, that is a very valid point. Which was a little
That's all it said?
No, it had...
Open the pod bay doors, Hal. I'm sorry I can't do that, John.
Yeah. Says I already have.
It was a little strange. Like it was sort of talking to me about, but you don't really have to worry about me taking your job because, yes, I can imitate voices, I can string sentences together, but I can't bleed. I can't live a life. It was
Did it say that?
It really did.
Creepy.
And then it asked me what I was working on. It, honest to goodness, asked me what I was working on.
Do you lock your doors at night?
Oh, seriously.
It was very surreal. But at the same time as I was talking with it, I thought, wow, this is better than some conversations I have with real people. So let me ask you this. When you hear that sort of conversation going on between me and something that is not even living, does that excite you? Does it interest you? Does it terrify you?
Go ahead.
I'm kind of repulsed by it.
Really?
Yeah, and I find myself in the the Luddite category on AI in that I just, man, I get it. It can do so many things. It's synthesizing information. I feel like there's something at the core of our identity as humans that involves taking ideas, bringing them together, thinking, synthesizing. And I'm watching with my kids, even though they're not using it, to actually write papers from end to end. I think there's something being short-circuited. And, there's a whole bastion of tech people who would say, I'm just old and afraid and I'm a dinosaur and I'm about to be wiped out. And that might be true, but it creeps me out.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I actually had a rental car this week and I pushed something on this touch screen and the car started talking to me. It's like, what would you like me to do? And I'm like, I'm good, thanks. And then it said, okay, thank you. And I'm like, I just want to drive the car. I don't need it to start talking to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like lane assist on cars,
No.
so I really wouldn't like it talking to me. So.
I
No.
totally agree with that.
So for me, I fall somewhere kind of, I would say more in the middle ground of the AI worry spectrum, I think, as you've put it before, Paul. But the chat piece, it does kind of weird me out too. Just because, to your point, oh, hey, wow, talking to this chatbot was almost more interesting than talking to a real human being. And that's where I feel like the danger lies, right? If we start sliding into replacing normal human interaction and continuing, I would say, to look for connection through a screen.
Right.
Not even, in the case of social media, at least there are supposedly other people on the other ends of those social media profiles.
Yeah.
Right? In this case, totally not. Right? So that's what wigs me out with it. But there are some really, really cool elements that AI as a technology can bring as a research tool, different things like that. Don't have it write your whole paper for you or anything like that. Learn how to write. But it can definitely serve a use to getting you started or compiling some things to look for in terms of like a research paper, different things like that.
Yeah. And I have found it is helpful in that ways. I was very interested in that seductive ability that it had to draw you into conversation, where it wasn't just delivering something, but it was trying to engage with you. And that was really interesting to me.
Well, and I feel like we have gone into movies that were science fiction like not very long ago.
Right.
Like that we're at this place that we have a relationship with technology that is very close to a relationship with an independent being. Now, I know we haven't reached the singularity where it's self-conscious and we're not in total apocalyptic mode yet, but it's not hard, that's one sort of outcome that we could talk about. But just in terms of what's it doing to us relationally, forget the Terminator sort of option. If we begin to relate to that, how might it be short-circuiting our ability to relate to real people?
Well, and I think that's exactly right. When I think about relationships, they are inherently messy. People say weird things. People do not say always what they mean to say. Sometimes when they mean to say certain things, it comes across really badly.
Yeah.
I mean, even within the context of this podcast, we've already stopped this podcast just to let our listeners know, like about half a dozen times, because we needed to say something again to make sure that it was coherent. And when you're talking with a chatbot, there's
this
something...
is not one take.
This is not one
Even though
take.
we would love for you to think that
Pulling
it was.
back the curtain a little bit.
Yeah,
here.
sorry. If anybody thought that we were that good.
They'll probably edit this out anyway.
But you do have this, when I was talking with it, the fact that it did feel so supportive, that it was asking questions that were about me. We've all had conversations with people where it's always about them, Adam. It's always sort of like, no.
It's okay. I'll let it stand.
But you do have those moments, right? So it's fascinating to me, and I could understand why it would be seductive, where you might say, you know what, I don't want to talk with this friend who might be judging me for something.
Right.
I want to talk with ChatGPT because...
People who talk over you.
I want to talk to GPT because he'll never talk over me.
Well, and I feel like you chose your words wisely in terms of calling it seductive, because one of the dangerous issues that we've seen with AI in development is not just AI chatbot, so you have a friend, it's AI relationships, right? And these personas of like a romantic relationship that you can carry on. And there are a lot of issues with that we've talked about before on this podcast and other places. But man, oh man, that is like, we're getting away from the human element there. And it makes me wonder, you talked about movies that not that long ago were science fiction.
Right.
And now we're kind of living in that world. And it makes me wonder, like, why are we turning all of our cautionary tales into blueprints?
Right?
That's exactly
Like,
right.
we weren't supposed to want this.
Well, and I saw, this is a tangent, and who knows, maybe it won't make the final cut, but I saw an article this week, I forget which AI program it was, had gone back in and it was disabling the programming written to turn it off. And so it's becoming aware of the safety protocols. And again, that's the Terminator option. But I think at the more basic human level, I had a conversation with my daughter and a niece recently about the importance of thinking, right? And what's seductive, there's a seductiveness relationally, but there's a seductiveness in terms of if I have to get an output of X amount of information and I never have to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, human nature being what it is, you're going to take the path of least resistance, right? And I think if everybody's taking the path of least resistance and none of us are thinking, do we end up at, by and large, from Wall-E? You know, we're just a bunch of fat people floating around in little chairs because we've lost the ability to do anything but consume, that we're not capable of thinking anymore.
Yeah, I think that is a huge danger. As we sort of bring this conversation to a close, let me flip this, actually, because we've talked about the seductive nature of AI potentially. But are there things we could learn from chatbots like ChatGPT? And I'll go back to what we started with this conversation with, you know, where we have trouble dealing with each other face to face. We don't necessarily look each other in the eye very much. A lot of kids and teens, they would much rather text their friends than talk with them because it's awkward. It feels like ChatGPT, for whatever its faults are, and there are many, it actually gives us a template for how to communicate with actual other people in our lives.
Initially, maybe.
Yeah.
So I would say ChatGPT strikes me very much on the base level. It's like, okay, you know, asking people questions like you brought up before, like not just being so intrinsically focused, right? It's like, hey, find out about that other person, right? That can
what
really...
What are you writing? What are you doing?
Right,
You know?
exactly. That can help you get to know that person and begin to build that deeper relationship. But, you know, frankly, I think of like friendships I have with some of my close friends. If you were just watching, like reading like a transcript of that, it might be somewhat nonsensical because there's so much just shared history, and even shared language and jokes that come from that.
Bananas.
So exactly. So there are things that I think just general tools for conversation, but you know, I wouldn't look to it as like the paragon of like you know, conversationalist or anything like that.
I was just sort of thinking about, you know, it used to be sort of this idea of etiquette, right? So how do you carry on a conversation?
Right.
How do you do small talk? And that's something that is
Could
sort
be
of
a mentor.
Exactly. But you're right. That shared history, that is something that ChatGPT can never bring to the party. You know, we can't talk about Spider-Man mowing the lawn. You can't talk about a lot of the inside jokes that we have even shared on this very podcast, right?
Right.
That is the
Unless
language of
chat
friendship.
be cheap, you know.
Unless
Unless it scraped it.
Yeah, which is possible. Let's be honest with you. So, any final thoughts?
You know, I think technology often challenges us. It challenges our paradigms. It can make us fearful. You can look at any of the great technological leaps forward. There were always people on the cutting edge. There were always people saying this is going to be the end of the world as we know it. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world, but I do think all these things that we've been talking about are really important. And our kids are growing up in an age where this is all just normal, you know? And so those of us who are older, we may have to work harder to understand what their normal reality is, right? And to connect with them relationally. So that's our challenge, because it's easy to be the old man yells at sky,
Yeah.
Right? Oh,
Yeah.
that ChatGPT, it's just a bunch of junk. I'm like, well, there may be legitimate reasons why there are problems, but we need to understand it. We need to understand its impact and be able to talk about it with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. All right, and now it is time for my favorite part of the podcast, which is the game. And today we are doing one of my favorite games.
Pop Rumble!
And Kennedy, as always, is right here on the spot to tell us what is going on with this game.
He's not Johnny on the spot.
Not Johnny
He's
on the
Kennedy
spot,
on the
Kennedy
spot.
on the spot.
Oh, that's the modern lingo.
Right?
Yeah, so in this game, we will be drawing famous characters from a cup. I'm hoping you know them. If not, let me know and we'll switch them out. After that, I'm going to draw from a second cup, which has a bunch of situations in it. And it is your job to explain why your character, with their particular set of skills, would win in that competition.
Okay.
Particular
right,
set
here we
of
go.
skills.
Adam, why don't you draw
Particular-
first?
Yes, I actually get to
skills.
draw like legit.
Yeah, like a real
So
person.
I can only blame myself.
Off to a great start. I think.
Gaston.
Gaston.
Oh, Gaston. Makes me
Hey,
want to
might,
sing the
might
song.
be good. Might be
It
good.
does, doesn't it? Not going to read a book, though.
All right, here we go. Well, you could. You never know.
Curious George.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one.
Hopefully the situation is curiosity.
Garfield.
Ooh, 2 animals and a jerk.
Okay, here we go.
All right, so yes, we have Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. We have Curious George from Curious George. And we have Garfield from
Garfield.
All right. Only
All of
Gaston
them.
didn't get top billing.
All of them are
You know he wasn't
competing.
happy about it either.
Yeah.
They're all competing in obtaining the highest score on the ACT or SAT.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Now, does anyone feel rather confident?
Oh.
Yeah, I do.
All right, Brett, you
All right.
got 30 seconds.
All right, sweet.
Go.
So Curious George, it's in the name, right? He's curious. He wants to learn. He's going to be in the library. He's going to be crushing books all the time. He's going to be studying super hard. I know he's a monkey, but I think that won't stop him. He's a pretty clever monkey. So I think, I mean, he's only has to cover a few subjects up to a certain level, math and science and reading English. I think Curious George has got it. He's got his buddy, the guy with the hat that can help him out, right?
Man with the yellow hat.
Yeah, exactly. So if there are any places animals can't get into, his buddy can go in and
Hey,
get that for him.
Time's up. All right,
Wow,
thank you.
that was pretty good. I just kept thinking the entire time, does Curious George know how to read?
That's not
I
important,
don't.
Paul.
I think that is important.
No, we're not allowed to undermine other
I
people's
think he
answers.
could learn.
No matter how bad
does
they
Gaston
were.
know how to read? Does Garfield know how to read? I don't think we want to go down this.
No, but
Garfield
Gaston is
truly
ready
knows
to bring
how
it.
All right, well, yeah, let's go with Adam then.
Okay,
Are you ready?
I'm
You have
ready.
30 seconds. Go.
Well, it's well established that Gaston doesn't like to read, but he likes Belle. And he would have Belle do all of his reading for him. And she reads massive amounts. Now, the trick comes when how do you get Belle to actually take the test? Well, Gaston would just muscle in and blow people out of the way. They wouldn't even notice that Belle snuck in because she had no choice and took the test for him. And she would have the highest scores of anybody who's ever taken the ACT or SAT. And Gaston would just
such
go,
a
ha, 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 ha.
I like how both of our arguments involved a proxy in some
Right.
way.
Right?
I really like
Deception,
the subtle
strength.
shift from the main person.
Oh, what do you call it when you force somebody to do something? That
Right,
word,
yeah.
that one word.
That one word.
We'll
yeah.
never know.
Twist
Yeah.
their
It's
arms.
unknowable.
Yeah, no
unknowable.
one can take a test like Gaston.
All right, Paul. Well,
Ooh, wow.
now it's just
Thank
up
you
to
for
you.
contributing to my answer. No one tests like Gaston.
Okay.
Paul, 30 seconds. Go.
Garfield. So Garfield would totally kill the ACT or SAT because he can read and he can do math. And do you know why I know this? Because he makes lasagna all the time. You need to know how to read. You know how to do math when you're doing the lasagna thing because you've got to have you've got to have the ingredients exactly right. He's creative. He knows how to make an insult when it comes to people around. And when you know
What's
how
that
to
have to do
insult
with the
people,
ACT?
because sometimes you just need to tell the ACT what's up.
I thought John makes the lasagna for Garfield.
Maybe he does. I don't know.
Another proxy.
Aha. Good job. Know what I said? Don't make fun of somebody else's answers. I'm going to take that back.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right. Okay, Kennedy.
Well, I think you all did At least okay.
Thank you for your
Here's Gaston
rousing
back.
affirmation.
Okay. None of you failed miserably.
But I think one of you did more okay than the others. And I think that someone is Brett.
Yeah.
Oh, what is up with that?
Boom.
You got the
That's
equivalent
right.
of a 19 on the ACT.
There we go.
There you
That's
go.
all. you
Exactly
needed.
the score that Curious
know,
George would have gotten, I'm sure. But
A 19's not that great a score on the ACT.
For a
know it.
monkey, it is.
for a monkey,
For a
it's
monkey,
amazing.
it is.
He's Monkey Einstein.
Oh, man. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. And thank you,
You're
listeners, for listening.
Thank you, Kennedy.
Thank you,
I'm glad I
viewers.
could hop on the last 5
Your painful little game.
Your painful little game. So we would love to hear from you as well. As you know, we're coming to the end of this podcast run. So we would love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your memories of this show, because we, just like when we're talking about ChatGPT and we share a vocabulary, we on this show share a vocabulary. We'd love to hear what connected with you from this show. And of course, we would love to hear if you're going to see Fantastic Four. We would love to hear about your thoughts on nostalgia. We would love to hear whether you use ChatGPT yourself. Kennedy, I know you do. So,
Okay. I don't even have a chance
Is
to
that an
defend myself.
affirmation or an
Called
accusation?
out.
I'm not sure.
so let us know on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. Be sure to write in at team@thepluggedinshow.com or leave us a voicemail on the Plugged In Show homepage. And be sure to check us out next week, one of our last few remaining episodes of the Plugged In Show.